everybody, to the Resilient Podcast. My name is Neil Tan. I'm your host. Today we've got a fantastic guest, John from Mantra. So he's the co-founder and CEO of the firm. So maybe John, thanks a lot for coming over.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate being here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Absolutely. So maybe we can kick it off with like a quick introduction about yourself.
Sure. So American-born, have lived all over the place for the last 10 plus years. Did my undergraduate studies in Spain. Ended up getting exposed to crypto around that time. So pretty early into Bitcoin in 2013.
Right.
Nothing life-changing. I was a poor college student at the time, but got exposed.
So that was like super early, right?
Pretty early, yeah.
Okay.
And then moved to Germany for a master's. That ended up taking me to China. So I got to Shanghai for a second master's, like a double degree program. Worked at a state-owned Chinese investment bank. I was like the first Laowai, one of the first Laowais to work there, called Guotai Junan Securities. Was doing kind of fintech focused research there.
Right.
At the latter half, the first half, I think I was just there to look nice and white and be international, to be completely honest.
The token Laowai.
Yeah, the token Laowai, for sure. But kind of made the most of the situation, and then moved down to Hong Kong end of 2017. Helped set up a kind of a centralized crypto exchange business. That was my first kind of like foray into entrepreneurship, I suppose. Just with a little bit of a soft cushion because we'd already raised money and things like that. But that was like, moved down here, started up the business in Hong Kong from scratch. So from pretty much 0 to 1, made all the mistakes in the book. Still making all kinds of mistakes, but you know, it's part of the process. And have been working on Mantra since 2020.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think a little bit of maybe to kind of frame it up for people to understand a little bit more about what your business is today. You can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Mantra in general builds a couple different products, but effectively in a nutshell, it's a Web3 protocol and application builder. So we both develop like layer 1 solutions, as well as our own applications. One is a US focused one called Soma Finance, and the other is an internationally focused one, which is similar to Soma, but for an international audience. We've been building this since about 2020. You know, we're pretty much all over the place. We got a team in Australia, Asia, Europe, in Americas.
Right.
So yeah, primarily focused on regulated use cases and on-chain financial applications.
Right. And then when you talk about the different types of use cases, what have you guys gone through as far as?
Yeah, so you know, kind of the backstory of the business was we launched Mantra DAO, which was this like DeFi DAO protocol that had, you know, DeFi products, staking, lending, a launchpad, a few different things. And this was like 2020 DeFi summer, kind of still a little bit wild west days. But we could always sense regulation was coming. And from a previous venture, we had been focused on, you know, regulated products and use cases. So we saw that this was coming. And, you know, after some success with Mantra DAO, we, you know, began shifting into what we felt was a more sustainable model, which was focusing on creating the best of DeFi with the best of regulation and compliance. So, you know, making sure that people don't lose their savings and get rug pulled or get scammed, but then still having the transparency of an on-chain self-custodial solution. Obviously, you know, things like FTX and 3 Arrows and, you know, everything that blew up, you know, in 2022, you know, only helps support what we're doing now, I think. Right. And it's kind of been one of those, like, everything that went bad was not necessarily good for the industry, but kind of good for us, if that makes sense.
Although, how's that?
Well, it's like, you know,
it's kind of interesting.
Well, it just kind of supported what we're doing, frankly.
Right.
It gave some validity to the fact that, like, you don't want to store your assets with a centralized entity like FTX or BlockFi or Celsius or Voyager, and the list goes on and on and on and on, right? So the whole idea of self-custody is an important one, but self-custody also brings risks, and, you know, DeFi and on-chain finance is hard, and abstracting that complexity away, making it simple so anyone can do it, in my opinion, is the next direction of how finance or consumer applications is gonna move.
Right. And you guys have pivoted quite a bit, right? I mean, you know, when your first iteration, when you're talking about Mantra now, all the way till now, I mean, would you have like maybe talk a little bit about that sort of entrepreneurial journey, right? Because I think it's quite interesting where you guys are at now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's
I mean, were you a firm believer in decentralization in that sense? Like,
no, not.
okay,
I mean,
right.
so like I've always been a pragmatist with most stuff, and I'm quite practical.
Right.
So I've always felt that there's a bit of a, you know, a middle ground that, you know, both sides of like decentralization maximalist and, you know, centralization kind of compliance maximalist can, you know,
they can coexist.
They can coexist. Yeah.
Right.
And I also believe that there's a little bit of decentralization theater, which in the future I think will be possible, but right now the technology is just not there yet. And it's good that there's people who are pushing the boundaries and experimenting with things on that side. But for what we're trying to do, it just doesn't work that way. So it's actually kind of funny that you use the term pivot, which is probably actually what it was, but I just have never thought of it like that. I just kind of saw it as the just general development of everything. And frankly, like the part of the entrepreneurial journey that I've seen is it's just constantly been figuring stuff out. It's not. I don't ever feel like I don't know. You know, everything has just been like try it works or it doesn't, and then if it doesn't work, then you can, you know, try something else, and it's just continually progression. And obviously, being attuned with the industry, like I spend a lot of time on Twitter and reading and just like thinking. I literally think about this stuff all the time, right? From the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed, I can't stop. That's good and bad. I think we'll talk about that a little bit too. There's some good and some bad in that. But you know, that helps you form a strategy on how you see things. And obviously in the fast-paced like industry of Web3 and digital assets, you know, you constantly have to be on the ball because it shifts like that.
People basically fork your stuff. I mean, or yeah, I mean,
you got to, well, exactly. I mean, like it's highly competitive. It's a 24/7, 365 market, which adds a whole different level of complexity because there's no such thing as a weekend in that case.
Right.
That's been a, you know, thing of learning to actually like step away a little bit, which I'm not really good at. I usually only step away so I can like rest. I'm still thinking, but I'm still thinking about it. So it, you know, it's one of the things I'm working on with my coach about like how to actually think about the successes and not just be focused on the next thing. Because I'm constantly just
thinking about the next iteration. But is that the nature of you, or is that the nature of the market?
Nature of me.
Okay,
for sure. I mean, it's a little bit of a so there's this thing like called self-saboteurs, and there's these different like protagonists that are within these saboteur categories, and one of them is hyperachiever, and then the other one's like hyper restless, and I'm both to the max. There's also like controller and you know like all these other ones, but those two I'm like to the max. And it's kind of one of those things where you know you immediately you achieve a goal, and then it's like on to the next thing, and you know you're never like truly satisfied. It's kind of funny. She asked me a question. So I did the CEO coaching thing. She asked me a question like, "What are you like proud about for this from the past quarter?" And I was like, I don't even think about that, right? Because it's always forward thinking and not really, you know.
It's not like you're looking at a quarter. Like it's not like a publicly listed company that like, okay, every quarter we got to put out a report.
Yeah.
These are what do we achieve? Here's the financial report.
Yeah.
You know,
well, we try to do stuff like that. I mean, we try to at least be like we actually do we actually do audits, and we actually have governance and you know stuff like that, which you know other crypto companies probably would be like, what the heck?
You're not doing like all the different types of transparencies and disclosures and things like that.
We're trying. I mean, well, we don't have to do public stuff,
you don't,
of course, but you know, we're trying to have a degree of professionalism, and you know, I mean, our CFO Brian, like, and I think Steve as well, our general counsel. I mean, obviously they bring a certain degree of you know professionalism experience that they would expect us to maintain, right? So, which is great. I mean, it's a good thing. They've been obviously super big supports to the development of the business, and I've been able to learn a lot from them too. So, you know, having those type of experienced people, you know, bringing a little bit more to the game has definitely helped the development of myself, but also the business. And they just, you know, you have to do public audits and stuff like this, which I think is it's a good thing. Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Painful, but it's a good thing.
It's not,
and it should become more of the norm, in my opinion. Right.
Right.
You know, I think the FTX is just a great example because, like, right now all the stuff is coming to light because it's the trial and everything. So, talking about
Trying to manipulate Bitcoin.
well, that, the like him balking at having a CFO. I think he said something like, how much effing money I have. Like I should, of course I know how much, obviously it's like customer money, not his. They didn't have a board.
Right.
Just stuff like that. It's like, how did you raise all this money from, sophisticated professional investors?
It's like wild. Yeah, I mean the level of governance or the lack thereof. I mean, yeah, what's your take on that whole thing? Especially, I mean, I'm sure inside of a lot of these different sort of firms, there is some semblance of that because one, they're startup, also they're at such a high pace.
Sure.
They're inside of crypto, a little bit more like gunslinger types.
Of course.
Right. But I mean, you're bringing that type of discipline inside of your platform. Right?
Trying to, yeah.
But what do you think about where are the holes and how could it be filled, and maybe from a technical perspective as well? Like,
so I've always felt, that's a good question. I've always felt that even myself, kind of did things maybe the harder way sometimes, not always taking the easy route, which sometimes can be honestly a little disheartening because you see, things like FTX and all this other stuff, which are like, seemingly overnight successes. And then obviously there was, something bad behind the scenes. But, taking that extra degree of, caution in how you actually operate your business, how you, go about your financials, how you go about audits, like all this stuff is super important. It might slow some stuff down. If of course you have one dude calling the shots who can just do whatever the hell he wants. It makes it a little bit easier to get things done.
Right.
But there's a reason to have checks and balances in anything, right? And that's clearly evident in all this FTX stuff. In our side, I think it's important for us to try to emulate that there's good actors in crypto, and it's not just a bunch of scam. The industry is weird. It's got all this kind of crazy, personalities and Wild West gunslingers and all kinds of stuff. Obviously, there's a ton of super professional and highly intelligent people as well. But it's about time the industry puts like good people on the pedestal rather than the Do-Kwons and the SBFs and the Mashinskis and like these type of people, right? Or the what's his name, Richard Hart, the Hex guy. Like all these people are like, it's like really, or BitBoy. It's like really. I'm not trying to beef with anyone necessarily, but it's like come on, like.
It's true though. It's true. I mean, it's just a fact. I mean, ultimately, all these people took advantage of what everyone values the most is trust, right?
Yeah.
So,
100%.
Yeah, it's just a scam.
I think one other final comment. I mean, I think one thing that a lot of people in crypto, they see the industry as technology, like a tech industry, right? Which in many cases it is. But when it comes to DeFi or, other types of financial applications, I mean, it's not just technology, right? It is, you're a financial firm, right? DeFi companies don't see themselves as finance companies. They see themselves as technology companies. And, having that understanding of finance and technology is a kind of an important thing. But in the end of the day, if you're taking clients' money, even if it's in a smart contract, you are a financial business, and financial businesses are built on trust, reputation, and security, right?
Yep.
And if you lose any of those, then it's over.
Right.
And it takes a long time to build trust and reputation, but it takes a very short time to,
lose it. Very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But so actually, I mean, inside of the industry, you've got, like you said, I mean, it's kind of like, one way or the other, or, there's two sides of the spectrum. You have people like yourself who have experience inside of financial industries. You've been inside, even arguably more stringent and more restrictive sort of environment. And you have other people that are like technologists, pure play technologists, but then offering a financial product and stuff. So how do you see that sort of coming to convergence? Are we going to run into more of these type of scenarios because some people just don't understand the fin and only the tech, or like
for sure? Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's honestly playing out a lot, and I think the U.S. is where it's the U.S., Hong Kong, Dubai. I mean, all these places where we're operating and talking to regulators fairly regularly. All like it's playing out live, like now.
Yeah.
And you're seeing technology companies that, just don't really agree with some of the ways that the licensing is being presented, and
Right.
obviously the regulators and the licensors
Yeah.
don't agree with the way that the technologists are providing certain services, and it's a little bit of a battle, right?
Right.
And depending on which jurisdiction you're talking about, it'll go in different ways.
Right.
And Hong Kong, I think, recently has done a good job of at least expressing the wish to be a venue for the East
Sure.
for regulated crypto businesses, and is trying to kind of begin licensing activities. But it's still pretty, I would say, vanilla product wise, right? It's a process. That's the other thing though with regulation and how this all plays out. Like crypto is this like instant gratification, 24/7, to the moon kind of
Right.
environment, but regulation just doesn't work like that, right? It takes time.
Right.
I mean, since 2017, 2018, we've been working with the US SEC and FINRA to get where we are now, which we're finally like beginning to launch SOMA.
Right.
That's 6 years,
Right.
right? And it's been 6 arduous years. So like
6 years.
we've literally been working on this thing for 6 years.
My goodness.
In Dubai, we've been working on our licensing application for over a year and a half,
Right.
right? So like this stuff takes time. It is not an instant kind of like
Right.
to the moon mentality when it comes to this type of stuff.
Do you think it's a point in time, or do you think that eventually, I mean, because you guys are first mover in that sense, right? It's like you guys started first, and then ultimately that's why it's slow.
Yeah.
Or do you think that it'll always be this way, or do you think it'll at
I
some
think
point accelerate?
it'll definitely accelerate.
Right.
They're still figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
The technology is improving, leaps and bounds over time. Regulatory frameworks are getting more clear, and more sophisticated. And obviously, the licensors or regulators are actually having the mandate to give licenses, and that's a good thing.
Like that's a push from the top.
Oh,
Not even
for sure.
talking about,
Yeah,
right,
it's a push from the top. So
Right.
that's a good. I mean, I can't speak for every single market in that case, but definitely in certain places, they're meant to be like their job is to give licenses, right? And give
not to hold people back.
Not to hold people back.
Like hold the right people back.
exactly the right people. And again, like having gone through this in multiple different places, and having in my opinion, a fairly sophisticated view on the international crypto regulatory space, just because I'm literally doing it. It's not easy, and there used to be licenses that 2018, 2019 days where people go to, not to point fingers at like Lithuania or Estonia or whatever, kind of thing. And it was too lax, and people just like it just invited all these bad actors to come in and we're licensed and regulated, but then
there's no oversight whatsoever.
There's no
it's
oversight.
Like, all right, you walk
now
in,
there is, and
here's a bank account. Here's
yeah. So I think again, it's developed, it's become more sophisticated, and we're seeing the maturation of this, but it's going to still take time. I mean, I don't really see this. I mean, this is multi-year still ahead before like you're getting tons and tons of licenses approved. And frankly, you just don't need tons and tons.
Right.
You just really don't, right? Like, does Hong Kong need 10 licensed crypto exchanges? Probably not. It just doesn't. I mean, there's 8 million people here, and 8 million people are not trading crypto.
But then, what's your take on that? I mean, and we'll come back to Soma and also the other piece. But what's your take on that? I mean, does Hong Kong have a shot at the title? I mean, how many licenses
Definitely.
do you think that there is, or should be, or in your opinion? Because ultimately, you also think not just purely domestic, but also international, right? I mean, that's part and parcel of the attraction, right?
Sure. I mean, I think my personal opinion on just the regulatory landscape is, the U.S. is going to be the U.S. So, do what you're going to do over
like,
there.
Here's a license. Here's a ticket. Here's a license.
Yeah.
Here's a
So the U.S. is the U.S. Internationally, there's only a few jurisdictions that are like legitimate, right? And where you'd really want to be that offer, the ability to offer products, grow and scale your business properly, because obviously the licensing in many cases is restrictive, compared to other people who are going to go off and do, unregulated stuff and steamroll you from a business perspective.
Right.
So it's not like if you're going to take the regulated kind of license path, it's like be ready for it, buckle up, kind of thing.
Like what? Yeah, because you're talking about 6 years.
I mean, it can take a long time.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't take that long here, and with some of the other stuff. I mean, in Dubai, for example, it's obviously a lot. We're progressing a lot faster than 6 years.
Right.
With a much more sophisticated framework, in my opinion. At least from a new technology perspective. In terms of like Hong Kong and its licensing ambitions, I do believe Hong Kong has it's either going to be Hong Kong or Singapore who are going to be the preeminent, dominant kind of like landing spot for crypto businesses in Asia.
Right.
And it's going to come down to those two. I mean, Japan is insular. Korea is insular.
You don't think Korea? Well,
but
insular.
It's just for Koreans.
It's domestic.
It's domestic. Yeah, it's a huge market. If you're Korean, great. My wife's Korean.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. But
Right.
Me coming there and trying to do business is good luck, right?
Right.
It's not easy. Same with
Right.
Japan. In the Middle East, Dubai is taking the lead with Vara. Abu Dhabi, which also in the UAE is another big one. I think the interesting play there is going to be Saudi in the future, because it's just like that opens up and it's
because they have
massive.
like 35 million people, and they're also being vying for a position. Right?
Exactly,
right.
and trying to become more progressive and trying to open up. So if they open up the taps, it's a whole different game in terms of capital.
Right.
Europe is challenging, even though they got Mika coming. I'm not a huge fan of Europe from the perspective of what we're doing, just purely because, even though it's supposed to be an intercontinental licensing regime, you're still dealing with 10 different languages, and it really only matters if you're in France or Germany.
Okay.
And you need to speak German in Germany, you need to speak France in France.
Right.
The UK is not part of it anymore,
Sure.
so it's its own thing.
Right.
I think UK is interesting, but again, it's the UK. And what we're trying to do, at least from an international perspective, the product suite that we're doing, in my opinion, the 0 to 1 opportunity, which is like the game changer for people, right, isn't in Europe, because people can already get access to stocks and people can already get access to different financial products. DeFi marginally improves that, but for someone like, for example, a tokenized treasury or a tokenized Tesla share for someone in Brazil or Argentina or Africa or Southeast Asia via crypto can be literally a game changer, because you don't have any access to that now.
Right.
Getting exposure with your USDC or your ETH or your wrapped Bitcoin or something like that, is better than anything, because you can't get that with your traditional brokerage. You might not even have a bank account.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? So
right.
That's kind of why our strategy is a little bit more focused on developing world,
right,
from that perspective. And I think, having that thought about where's the actual value being created, even in Soma, right? It's a US platform.
Sure.
We're probably about 30% US people and about 70% international folks that are on board to it.
Right.
Because again, you're getting exposure to a US suite of products, but that's a game changer if you can onboard from the Philippines and, get access to it, or Nigeria or Argentina.
Basically bottom of the pyramid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you're trying to do, is more accessibility to it.
100%.
And even if they don't have necessarily a bank account to do it, they still have some sort of a, wallet or some sort of account.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, a lot of those places are crypto crazy.
Right.
And they're generally young, digitally native populations from a demographic perspective. In many cases, there's a poor economic situation or macroeconomic situation. Like Argentina, they have hyperinflation like crazy. So why would you want to keep your money in Argentinian pesos?
Right. Turkey.
Literally, why? Or Turkish lira? Why?
Yeah.
I'd much rather be in USDC, but if you could have USDC and get exposure to a US Treasury, which is giving me 5%, duh. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. Or even just being able to, get exposure to Tesla.
Right.
That for many people could potentially be a life-changing experience.
Right.
And U.S. public blue chip equities is potentially a life-changing experience for a lot of people.
Right. So tell us a little bit about the whole Soma Finance and also your experience in trying to get the DeFi platform, right? The license for the DeFi. Those two things.
So Soma goes back a while. I met our partners on the broker-dealer side, Bill and Jim, in 2016, 2017. So a long time ago. They were the initial partners that we were working with on the centralized exchange platform. That's how I met them, basically. And then that kind of wound down. The other partners continued on with it. And we were like, hey, we want to do... we went our separate ways. I mean, that's a whole... It wasn't an amicable separate ways. That was an interesting experience as a 24 or 5-year-old going through that. To be honest. But
having that kind of it's worse than like a girlfriend boyfriend type thing, because it's business, right?
Because it was for sure, because there's
money
and legal stuff involved. That was a trial by fire. For sure, very early on in my career.
Right.
the first of many, I'm sure.
Oh.
I don't mean that in a bad way. Just like, you got to be prepared for this stuff. In startup game, it's
Right.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
You try to be on the right side of that path, but
Right.
and then believe I have been. But anyway,
Right.
and so we met Bill and Jim through that, and back then we went to FINRA and we said, hey, we have this broker dealer license because Bill and Jim had a broker dealer called Tritorian Capital. We want to issue private placement securities utilizing blockchain technology. And they're like, hold on.
They're like, what?
No way. You need to apply for what's called an NMA, new membership application. So we went and applied for that. And we asked for permission back then, which was definitely the right thing to do. And it was kind of interesting because around the same time, other broker dealers were just doing it. They're like, oh, we have a broker dealer. We can just do private placements.
Right.
And we're like, we know you can't because we asked.
Right.
And they told us no.
Right.
But they would still go do deals, and you'd see articles come up in CoinDesk and be like, this is so annoying.
Right.
All these guys are getting attention, but they don't have any licensing.
Yeah.
A little bit of that regulation,
Right.
technology kind of thing.
Yeah. All it takes is somebody to drop a note in the hotline.
Well, and that happened, and those guys got shut down.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay,
for sure, 100%, they got shut down.
Right.
And we ended up going through, a year and a half-ish process of going back and forth with FINRA to get this tokenization license, which allows us to do private placements on chain, retail, and institutionally friendly. The retail is the big differentiator because no one has that as far as we're aware, as well as on any chain or protocol. So you can do both, open permissionless like Ethereum, Solana, Cosmos, whatever, or you could do it on a permission chain like a Hyperledger or something like Corda or whatever. And we got this license, and we're like, oh, amazing, we're gonna get all this fanfare now. But the way that it works in the U.S. is they don't publicize or notify that people have been given licenses. It's on a public registry, so it's called broker check. You can go check all the broker dealers in existence, and it shows all the activities that they're allowed to do. But they're not going to, FINRA or SEC will not issue a statement saying that these guys can do this.
Right.
They will never.
Why?
They don't want to pick favorites.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just how they work.
But it's just a timing thing. I mean, okay, you got a license, you announced.
Well, we got it. We got it. We tried to announce, and
oh, they didn't want you to.
No, they don't care if you announce
it.
They don't care if you announce it. But they won't announce themselves.
Right.
So that doesn't really aid in the oh great, you're approved kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas in Hong Kong or Dubai or whatever, they're going to announce and say, hey, these guys are actually been approved.
Right.
So we did it, and we're expecting a bunch of fanfare. It was minimal at best.
Right.
But we got the license, which was important, and we went out and tried to do the first deal that was exciting. And I had been talking to a basketball player called Spencer Dinwiddie. Plays for the Brooklyn Nets.
Okay, right.
Well, he played for the Brooklyn Nets at the time. I think he's back. He's hopped around a little bit. Okay. He wanted to tokenize his earnings on his contract.
Really?
This was 2019.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right.
And he had. So I reached out to him on LinkedIn. I saw that he was doing it. And I reached out to him on LinkedIn. Big basketball fan, big LinkedIn fan, and he responded.
He's like, "Yeah, I'm."
Yeah, I was like, "Hey, I see you're doing this.
Wow,
you're doing this
So
deal.
cool.
We have a license. You should, we should talk."
Right.
So we got in touch. Started working with him. Ended up actually working with 2 other broker dealers first.
Sure.
But both of them
fell out, or
both fell out. Yeah.
Okay.
Because they didn't have the license.
Right.
They weren't, and the NBA wasn't happy with the deal, whatever. Right. So that got shut down. But we actually got the transaction to happen.
Wow.
Got it through. It kind of, the story of trying and to a degree failing, but just learning and then growing from it. Right. The time when the transaction was closing was March of 2020. So we're selling a basketball player token.
Right.
That initially had a lot of fanfare and a lot of capital support, and then COVID.
Wow.
And who's investing in excuse my language, basketball player shitcoin, when the NBA is shutting down? No one knows what the hell is happening with COVID, right. And even the asset that we're tokenizing, in theory, Spencer got COVID himself. So It's the first time you've ever tokenized a COVID-stricken asset, I think. In the world.
Tokenized COVID.
Yeah. So we got it done, but it wasn't as we were trying to raise 10. I think only 1.5 ended up actually committing, something 2 or something like that. Although initially there was a lot of interest, and then we proceeded to get audited by FINRA. Every single department audited us, and we were a small business. It was Bill, Jim, myself, Will, and we just, we couldn't do other things other than focus on the audits, and Bill and Jim were, managing that. So that's when Will and I literally we had to figure something out. So that's when we started MantraDAO with a couple other parties.
Cool, very cool.
So that was like we had this regulatory experience of with the SEC and going through one of the first regulated offerings in the U.S. history on chain, and then we went and actually, but it was like kind of rudimentary and it wasn't like DeFi, right, or DeFi-ish. Then we went and did MantraDAO, which was like building all this DeFi stuff, figuring out how to work and operate in this space. Again, making all kinds of different mistakes and figuring it out along the way, and then bringing those two ideas together, and that's kind of where Soma sits.
That's where Soma now is.
Yeah, so you can kind of see it's like constantly trying, failing, growing, learning, but not necessarily in my mind pivoting. It's always been in this.
Right.
In my mind, my life is always in a direction, but it takes,
Right.
But as long as you're progressing forward,
right.
And you can kind of see that, even if it is a little bit of a step back, it's still an opportunity to go forward.
How did you, I mean, obviously, I guess just kind of a little bit about how you built that type of resilience, right? I mean, I think, is it from like, when you were a kid, or like, is it through your sort of like studies or your professional career, or
so the other part of my personality is hyper competitiveness.
Okay.
I've channeled that in different ways over my life.
Beer chugging, or
it depends on the time. Some with sports, some with other things.
Right.
So that's also part of it. I'm honestly like I'm just built for this. Like I just know I was put on this earth to do this type of stuff. Not like Mantra or Soma or whatever, but just entrepreneurship.
You
building
were not
businesses,
born
leading
to
teams,
get a job and sit at a desk.
No, definitely not. And I've obviously had to figure that out over time through trial and error, lots of error. But I think just naturally I found that I have a predisposition for handling immense loads of stress. And I do like the managerial, like culture building element of being a CEO and being a founder. The people element, like that's I live for that kind of stuff. I live for the growth, and I found over time, particularly like in the last 3 years, taking that as a sample size, like when crypto was going crazy, it was all good and it was fun and it was easy. The last, let's call it 18 months, have been like probably the hardest 18 months of my life. But I haven't enjoyed it. I've never liked it more. If that makes sense. Yeah, literally.
Like the pain.
I like it. So my dad has this. I would prefer maybe slightly less volatility in my personal financial life, to be honest. But I do
You're
enjoy
going into treasuries. No.
Yeah, no, I mean seriously, the next one I'm taking some of the side mix more for my family than myself personally, to be honest. I'm good at going the ups and downs, but for the family part, it's important to have some sustainability and whatnot. But my dad has this expression, because he was in the Marine Corps, called "you got to embrace the suck."
Yeah.
And like, if you can like, make that your mantra and really enjoy the shit, then it becomes a superpower.
So that's where mantra comes from.
No, it does not. But it does not. But
it's like embrace the suck as a tagline.
Embrace the suck is one of my personal mantras. That's for sure. 100%.
100%. That is wild. So key learnings, I mean, out of that whole experience. I mean, you've gone through ups and downs like crazy. I mean, not even just talking about the markets, but then the business, the teams, working with your own, co-founders and so forth.
Absolutely. It is a just ever evolving process. And if you become, I think this is part of that like hyperachiever element where you don't care as much about the goal, but rather the next one, then it's constantly like, okay, well, I've done this and we've figured it out, but now what's the next thing? And, I just naturally am, I think, a problem solver, which sometimes it's great for work, maybe not always good for personal life, just purely because, sometimes your wife doesn't want you to solve her problems. She wants you to listen to her. You know what I mean? Most of the time, she probably just wants you to listen rather than like try to fix it.
Yeah.
But my natural is just like, I want to fix stuff, right? So like I know that was one of the things you had a question on before, is like the good and the bad of personal life and founder life and whatnot. that's one of the things that, turning off boss John, CEO John, founder John, and just having like home John is very hard for me.
Very different.
Yeah, very hard.
Then what do you do? So
working on it. I don't know. I don't think I have a solution to it yet, to be honest.
You like hit the gym, or you kind of like
you gotta find stuff that like gives you your time, your space for yourself, but also for your partner.
Together.
Yeah, together.
Right. More trips together, more vacations, more.
No, honestly, we haven't done dinners. A vacation in a long time.
Date nights kind of thing.
You got to do date nights. I mean, so like, I actually really do not enjoy vacation.
You don't like date nights either.
No, I like date nights. I like date nights. I like date nights. I definitely like date nights. Right. But I do not like vacation. It stresses me out.
Right.
Like actually stresses me out.
Right.
Like being sick stresses me out. Vacation stresses me out. Weekends can stress me out a little bit.
Weekends stress you out? Yeah,
because I'm not doing anything. Okay. Like I constantly need to be in motion doing stuff.
Right.
And if I'm not, then it's a little bit, it's stress-inducing.
Right. But doing something for the business, or just doing
business?
Okay, got it.
So like business and life is, for me, is like one.
Together. There's no separation.
There's no separation
between you.
Yeah. It is my life, right? It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And again, finding like things that allow you to maintain your mental health, your physical health is super important. I think the two biggest things in the past like 18 months was obviously, I've always been, athletic and generally physically fit, but during the bull run, like put on a lot of weight and was not really super healthy.
Yeah.
Also, this was in COVID time, so this happened to a lot of people. Like gyms were closed.
Yeah,
But thankfully I'm 6'3", so putting on weight is okay for me generally.
Yeah. Less visible.
Yeah, less visible, exactly. But being trying to hit the gym regularly, it's like it's me time, and it's super good to be able to do that. Maintaining a very healthy diet. I really don't have as much of a social life as I used to have, which has been important for the business, I think. And I like it. But on the mental health side, like the coaching thing that I started this year has been super, super important. Shout out to Celine, my coach. And that's like, it's like business therapy basically. And particularly as a founder, as a CEO, it is like lonely at the top. It's a little bit cliche, but it's 100% true. So having someone to talk to about things is really important.
Right.
Because no one else understands, honestly.
Not even you talk to your wife about it. You're like,
you can, but it's not that you can talk about that stuff. Like you can talk about that to your partner, your spouse, your friends, your business partners, your parents, like your mentors. You can, and I do. But it's not the same as someone who comes from a totally unbiased perspective that's just there to listen and help and give advice and whatnot. And frankly, I think it's important that you pay them to do it, because mentors are good. We saw John Cahill. I would consider him one of my mentors, just outside. I have a lot of people like him that are super important in my life, but they're friends as well, and you can't expect certain things out of them like you would
friends. They're not like working or doing something specifically for you.
Exactly. Right. So it's an important thing. So the coaching part has been like life changing for me, literally life changing.
But so before this time, how did you vent that? Because
didn't. Yeah.
Like you just
didn't.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned earlier, like good at handling a lot of stress. I'm still good at that, right? So I don't necessarily put my problems on other people. Right. So I can internalize a lot.
Right. So you just kept it inside and just kind of ride with it.
And, I mean, it's still a little bit of that, like, I'm just kind of built for this kind of thing.
Right.
Mentality, I guess. And I can just handle a lot of shit. I think. I mean, really. At the end of the day.
So you kind of look at that, and then now directionally, where are you taking the business, or what's kind of like the next phase, and then of the development of the business.
So this year has been, in my opinion, a lot of like cleaning up baggage.
Baggage. Okay.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is just like we had all these different things that we were working on, and that were part of like a initial bigger vision, or not even bigger division, just an initial different vision. And as we've kind of shifted and become more focused, it's been a lot of just focus on stuff. Particularly for me, I want to focus on the most important things. Right. And frankly, I wasn't CEO of Mantra before, because it was a DAO, right? We had two other co-founders. It was a different setup. So like, beginning of this year, I took over the actual role of CEO. Although, to be honest, was kind of already doing that
course.
naturally.
Somebody had to take the
Yeah. And learning how to be a professional CEO and whatnot is an exercise in like setting culture, setting strategy.
Sure.
Making sure the lights stay on. Like these type of things are, in my opinion, the three most important things you need to focus on. And then solving problems. So like learning all that this year, refocusing as much as possible, trying to empower the team as much as possible in challenging times. Recently, particularly like trying to focus on delegating more. And interestingly, like I don't feel like I'm a bad delegator, but I think that I was enabling the team to come to me to answer their questions or solve the problem,
Right.
when frankly they knew that they could do it anyway. So I'm just like, I don't even want to hear about it anymore.
Right.
We have a framework about how to make decisions.
Oh, is that right?
literally a decision tree. We have leaves, branches, trunks, and roots.
Okay.
Branches and leaves, I don't really need to know about.
Yeah,
right. Trunks, I need to actually be informed, and like roots, you can't cut that off without.
Right.
I need to, that kind of thing. So
Right.
like starting to implement this type of stuff has been really important, and giving people want to be empowered, right? People want to do this stuff, and kind of understanding that psyche about enabling and empowerment and accountability has been a lot of stuff we work on in the CEO coaching too.
Right.
So
what's obviously it's a bear market right now, so motivation inside of the teams, that type of drive, how do you maintain that? Like, I think that's always a very big challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs, right? So,
100%. I mean, it's particularly in crypto because it's like so in your face. Because it's like all about price action on crypto assets, right? Whereas in other industries, you could be in a downturn, but it's not like you have a publicly traded asset that's like in your face, like going up and down, and
Right.
So that's obviously been an important thing to just kind of manage with the team. I think the best way you can manage that as a founder or a CEO is model the behavior you want them to see and maintain optimism, show up, and get your shit done, and be present and be jovial and do whatever you can to support them. Also, frankly, I spend a lot of time like playing psychiatrist to a degree.
Is that right?
For sure.
So you're taking people into the office.
100%.
Like,
no, I want to talk to people. I want to talk to the team, like, figure out what's going on, how they're feeling. I enjoy that part of the job. And it's an important part of my role, I think. It also helps me, frankly, because I get energy from it. So, at the same time of me being able to hopefully solve and listen to their problems and concerns, I can also then make more informed decisions on how to grow and lead the business. And I like it, right? So, I get energy from it too. So it is a two-way street in many cases.
Right.
But it's all about, you got to model the behavior you want.
Right. So you give them feedback, they give you feedback as well? Or?
Feedback is an immensely important part of the coaching stuff.
Right.
100%. It's like, it's everything. Literally.
Right.
It's everything.
And you got to keep that, one is the cohesion of the team, and also maintain that sort of culture as well, right? I mean, I think it's
100%. And, similar to, trust and reputation and things of this nature, culture is very hard to build and it takes time, but it's very easy to erode. Super easy. Good news travels very slow. Bad news travels super fast. So, building that up and managing, tough times is an important part of like really setting the culture and embodying it. Like, don't set rules and don't set a culture that you can't maintain yourself, because otherwise it's just going to do the exact opposite of what you want.
Right. Yeah. Because
I love researching and reading about this stuff. Like I read all the time, but I'm always reading business books and listening to business books, mainly Audible.
a
lot of Audible. It's easier. It's easier for me to do because you can put it on like 1.25 or 1.5 speed, so it's a little bit quicker.
Sure. Yeah, you always kind of like want to high speed through some of that stuff.
Definitely.
And then so future of crypto. I mean, like, you kind of look at it. People are talking about it. The halving and everything like that. I mean, what's your take in terms of like the future roadmap, if you will, for crypto?
I mean, I think the two big events upcoming that could be potential, good tailwinds, obviously, is the halving seems to be a self-fulfilling prophecy over time, or has been over time. Bitcoin ETF approval, I think, must be a good, tailwind for the industry, even if it does get priced in from a price action perspective. But we literally this week was the fake news about the ETF being approved, and you saw how
Yeah,
the spike
yeah.
went. So
It was
you
like
can tell
almost
people.
30,
You can
right?
tell
Yeah.
people. Yeah, it went up to 30 and then came back down. Obviously, it was fake, but I think people are definitely excited about that. And how could you not if someone like a BlackRock or Fidelity or someone gets an institutionally approved product that institutions can get exposure to Bitcoin with at the spot level, right? So that's going to be important. I think I see all kinds of extremely talented, extremely motivated builders continue to build. So the people who I actually like the bear market kind of stuff.
You like
I enjoy it more because you have the people who are really here for the real reasons, not just for the quick wins.
Right.
And I just vibe with that more. A little bit more like I enjoy the hard way to
Sure.
agree. If it's easy, everyone will do it kind of thing.
Right.
And the bull market is like when you can kind of have a little bit more fun and it's easier. And I hope not to get into that trap again on the next one.
Too much partying or.
I don't think that's going to happen just because the way my life has progressed and I'm getting older. So, but you don't want to let your foot off the gas. So in my opinion, like the ones who are building now, it's the best time because you can launch and get the core community and the core believers interested in your product. You can really get good feedback on what you're trying to build and develop. Where that's a little bit harder when it's just a bunch of speculators and people who are just there for quick bucks, right? But if you have that infrastructure and foundation built during the bear, it's really going to give you a strong tailwind in the bull, and that's how you can gain market share and become one of the next, people who wins big in the next cycle, right? And the other thing with crypto, and I think just in general, is like it's hard once you've had that big win to continue it. And what I mean by that is you kind of mentally check out because in many cases you're financially set up for the rest of your life, right? And it's kind of hard to continue to motivate yourself, and in many cases. And I found over my life through multiple booms and busts, I am no happier with X amount of dollars in my crypto wallet or bank account than I am now with significantly less because I'm putting it all into the company and not getting paid, right?
Right.
For a long time.
So it's not driven by the financial,
absolutely
not the money.
No, absolutely not. No, if you can find that motivation that's bigger than that, then again, it's like I would do this for the rest of my life just because I love it.
Right.
And it's like when you find that out and you find like, hey, this is what I'm meant to do. It's like just
right.
I don't need to worry about stuff. Even if it all blows up and it all doesn't work, I know I can do it again, and I know what I'm here to do. So it's not. I don't know. You don't have to worry too much about that.
Where's Mantra in 5 years?
Hopefully listed on the Hong Kong exchange. To be honest, I mean we're a homegrown Hong Kong company. Founded literally in where we launched, we were literally in a little shop house, lane house thingy on in Shenzhen. In Shenzhen, yeah.
Right.
The Wild Lot. It's not there anymore, but we're like that's where we launched the token. I'll never forget that day. Or that week, frankly.
On that day, like you were sitting in that
little thing when it launched and we got listed on all these exchanges and we crashed BitThumb Global and because it was so much hype and Poloniex, which was Justin Sun, stole the listing and it was crazy.
Right. What did it hit in that 24-hour period?
I mean, it probably like a 20-30x immediately off the gate. So it was something pretty crazy. And so we're like Hong Kong born and bred. Obviously with Hong Kong developing its regulatory frameworks and whatnot, I love Hong Kong. I want to live here for a long time. I think it's an opportunity to, be a homegrown success. And I hope we can, achieve that.
Right. Where do you, what other side projects are you thinking about as far as outside of this?
Nothing. I don't think about anything like this. I'm trying to, honestly, I'm trying to, we have, within the business, we have other things, Club DAO, you've been to Club DAO, the little event space and some other stuff, but thankfully I don't have to deal with any of that anymore. I don't want to.
It was a side project and then you're
you guys other people are managing it. I'm not really an operating partner on that. I mean, I'm a partner, but not operating. So it's just, I'm focused purely on this stuff and I'm trying to declutter everything. That's why I said 2023 is clear the baggage, focus. 2024 is execute, operate, scale. Hopefully continue to raise more money. That's always a challenge.
Fundraising.
Fundraising all the time.
In this market.
But I think we're well set up for the future if we continue to push. And I'm pretty bullish on everything.
Awesome. Yeah, I think those are the ones. I mean, it's been fantastic having a chat
Yeah,
with
thank
you
you so
and
much.
just kind of going through this stuff. I mean, I think hopefully people learned a lot from this, and it's inspiration that you've come from that little shop house inside of Shanghai all the way to here.
Yeah,
So it's fantastic. Thanks a
I
lot for
appreciate
coming
that. Thanks so much, man. I
in. Really
appreciate it.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.